You're listening to Toronto's #1 real estate podcast, powered by Watson Estates. The most successful local real estate investing starts right here, right now. Here's your host, broker, investor, and social media influencer, Bradley Watson.
Good morning, investors, and happy Canada Day. Thank you for tuning in. Today is July 1st, 2020, and here we are with the #1 podcast for Toronto real estate on iTunes, Spotify, and Google Podcasts, tuning in with you guys, our family, every day as we continue to dive into what's been going on in our local real estate market. And despite it being Canada Day, doesn't mean there isn't a ton of stuff going on around us in our marketplace, and so I'm excited to dive into some of the big stuff. As you can hear from the title, there's a lot of questions on where we're going to be price-wise in 2020 and price-wise in 2021. And so I want to discuss, what do people expect local prices to do this year and into next year? And then we're going to talk about, are Canadians taking on more mortgage debt or less? And there's points on both sides. So we're going to discuss what is going on in general and what comes next in the reopening of Toronto. Make sure you guys check out today. We've got a YouTube video coming out. I interviewed Gary Hibbert. He's an investor. He's a broker as well. He's involved in a lot of partnership and investing. So you can check that out. And that will also be on our podcast tomorrow if you are tuning in through any of the other podcast channels. But as mentioned, today is Canada Day. What do I love most about Canada? Hey, good question. Actually, better question. What do urine samples and Canadian beer have in common? The taste. What I love most about Canada is I love the Leafs, pre-1967, of course, and more recently, the Raptors. I love free healthcare. I love Canadian bacon, even more so when I go into the States and I try what theirs tastes like. Oh, and I love that the rest of the god-awful world thinks we're polite. I'm sorry. Welcome to Canada, and thanks for making our country awesome. It is a beautiful place. We consistently rank high on the list, but I still think that our country is underappreciated. We rock. You guys rock. Thanks for making this place a place worth laying my roots and my family's roots. So here we go. Let's get into talking about real estate. And in my opinion, the article of the day, the conversation of the day is what's going to happen with prices. Because we had a recent housing market poll come out from Reuters, and it was taken as of June 9th to June 23rd. Okay. And they asked a few questions. First of all, they asked about Canadian home prices. What are your forecasts for the change in average prices for the full year of the following: 2020, 2021, and 2022. And if we look at Canada as a whole, we see it's 1.5% up in 2020, but down 1.2% in 2021, and then back up again with flying colors in 2022. Now, when we look closer to Toronto, their June poll says people are expecting that in 2020, prices to be up year over year by 3%. Okay, and we'll talk about that in a second because that's not so glamorous. 2021 will be down 3.1%. And then, as similar to what we see in Canada, back in 2022, all the way out, back up 4% for that year, which of course is going to be in line with, if you're down 3%, it's quite easy to get that number. In fact, that tells me 2022 is not even going to be that great, because if we drop by 3.1%. Now, the funny thing is I don't know how they collected this data. I don't know if they were asking industry experts, they were asking economists, or they were just asking run-of-the-mill Canadians that were trying to get across the border as they were waiting for their temperature tests, right? I don't know. But what we are seeing here is a couple things. Number one, people anticipate 2021 to be worse than 2020. What we also see here is that GTA home prices currently sit at 10% year to date over last year. So if we're going to end 2020 at 3%, that assumes year over year declines in Q3 and Q4. So as we're painting this picture of what we've come through so far, there's been wonderful buying opportunities and people have taken advantage. The market is on fire in Toronto. It's red hot. It is red hot. despite all the news, despite all the concern and the lack of sales, things are doing really good. But there is an expectation from this poll and from other people that are kind of talking about what the rest of 2020 will look like, that I think Q4, they say Q3, possibly, but later in the year is where we're going to have a little bit of question marks into what our market's going to do. And based on what CMHC is saying, based on what a lot of people are saying, just be careful, okay? Don't buy something now and then sell it in December, okay? Make sure you're holding that sucker until 2022. And if you want out, I'd be counting my cards right now. Figure it out. We are in the heat of spring. And I had a very good comment that came from Sanjay Bakshi. Thank you for your comment on YouTube, because I never thought of this recently. I think about this as it relates to the stock market, but I don't really think about this as it relates to housing. I thought it was a good point. Listen to this. This is going to crater after the American election. Mark this post. There's history behind this. So I don't need to mark that point because I know, I'm aware of history. And it is quite true, if we look in history, wherever there's been an election, Donald Trump was actually a bit of a phenomenon that things didn't go crazy. In the recent past, generally, presidents during that election process find themselves in a pickle. Whether it's right before they're elected or right after they're elected, there tends to be problems. Now, are the problems already happening? Like maybe that's what we're already seeing, or is there something more to come post-election? And so I think that's a great point, because that lines up with some of the other challenges. I'm even seeing articles from the States, the US recently, talking about how the number of mortgage applications are going down. And so we got to be really careful, guys. We just got to tread very carefully. Make sure those properties that you're purchasing have cash flow. Don't rely on equity within the next year. Let's play the long game and create long-lasting, multi-generational wealth as investors. And I've also received suggestions that condo prices have come down. And I have not seen that, but I have people saying it. So I am excited to see the numbers for this month, for June, coming out next week. So I'm going to keep an eye on that. In fact, next week, I'm going to be up at the cottage, but I'm going to sneak away, sit in my car, and tune in with you guys, because that's where I want to be. I actually do enjoy tuning in. I mean, it's Canada Day. Here we are. So a lot of things to look forward to in the next week, a lot of interesting things to happen in the coming weeks. And so keep your eyes peeled, guys. And if you haven't already, subscribe to our channel, because we're going to continue to put out awesome content and track things daily on what exactly is going on in our world and what is going on in our local market. Okay. I have been missing dear friends of mine. I don't know if you have too, but my friends over at Better Dwelling, where'd they go? Like, did they quit? Are they all remote working, taking advantage and not doing their jobs? Because they haven't been popping up in the major headlines, and it's kind of concerning because they're often the loudest opposition voice. In fact, Robert Eddy on YouTube puts it like this. I love it. P.S. Better Dwelling from Vancouver is not a reliable Toronto stat source. They have clickbait headlines and a, quote, sky is falling perspective. Steve P. is a publicly avowed renter on purpose, and he finds data points articles that reinforce his personal decision. P.S. number 2, get a semblance filter, suppressor for your audio. S particularly. I actually think I got one since then. I actually have. So on my podcast, if we're gonna go here, I've actually now got a mic cover, like a filter that goes over. I don't know the technical term. I'm in real estate. Which is the perfect second career choice for most Canadians. But I've got a little cover, like a wind cover, and then I also have now a pop filter, so I hope it's better. I honestly do. Here's my test. Here's my test, Robert. You let me know. What do you think? Did I blow out your ears? But this is true. Better Dwelling. It's funny because I didn't realize that he's a renter on purpose, but it makes sense, right? Like, we're going to keep people renting forever because our market is a terrible place to be. And baseline added to that, yeah, Better Dwelling gives hope to long-term renters and those parent basement dwellers. But we gotta have a counterbalance. There needs to be a dark side to the force. And you know why they're not popping up is because they're publishing positive articles. Come on, guys, know your place in history. So here's an article that came out, and don't worry, things will get dark real quick. Canadian homeowners pull back on home equity borrowing and they pay down their debts. So they're saying this: Canadians have suddenly stopped borrowing their home equity and are lowering exposure. According to OSFI, the Office of the Superintendent of Financial Institutions, filings show the balance of loans secured by residential real estate actually fell in April. The dip was one of the largest single month drops over the past 8 years of data. So in other words, as it relates to the home equity line of credit, people are taking out less debt. And so how are you going to paint a bad picture? That's a good thing. And they say the total balance of loans secured by real estate is down on the month, making a minor advance from last year. The total balance reached $307.75 billion in April. I mean, when you guys hear, if I were to just say 150 billion or 600 billion, does that number even register? I know it doesn't for me. Okay. The numbers are so big that really, what is $1 billion? But it's down 0.51% from last year. This represents an increase of 2.27% compared to the same month last year. And it is the seventh largest single month drop over the past 8 years. Even more interesting is this was due entirely to personal borrowing fallings. So in other words, the reason that HELOCs or line of credits are coming down is because of personal borrowings. So people are not borrowing money to renovate at Home Depot. Somehow they're coming up with the money. Good job. Way to go. This is a good trend. This is a great thing. Now, where do we see borrowings increasing? Because we do. Oh, we do. Now, people who are securing business loans, listen to these numbers, are up huge. 14.46% compared to the same month last year. So people who are borrowing money for businesses, they are tapping into this line of credit. So it's being used to protect the businesses that you hear are failing all around you. So guess who's getting spanked? It is your local coffee shop, right? It's those local restaurants, the owners. Before they go under, their line of credits are going under. I shouldn't be laughing. That's terrible. Bad Brad. Sit. So if people stop, this is what they say. This is why I'm like, come on, Better Dwelling. No wonder you don't pop up with the headlines. If people stop using their homes as ATMs, the economy has a little more ground it needs to make up for growth. Even Better Dwelling appears optimistic these days. Warning. One of the things to keep in mind, I saw an article that came out, I think it was in Vancouver from CBC. This idea of people aren't getting a full $2,000 in June. I don't know if you've heard about this. It sounds like because people received advance payments at the beginning of the CERB, that at the tail end, they're not receiving them now in full. And so people who are dumping them down to pay off their line of credits are getting caught. Right? So the main thing here is, I think it's happening, but people need to, first of all, pay off your debts, but we need to we can't be running paycheck to paycheck. We need to become more savvy, which is why it's great they're updating the curriculum in Ontario, which got backlash for some reason. But ultimately, we need to get money smart. Get money smart. Stop running on debt, because we run on debt. In fact, that's one of the things that makes Canada great. National debt. I love it. Now, Better Dwelling, they also paint the full picture. In a different article, they talk about actual mortgage balance, which is something we are tracking, because some of you are probably sitting back and thinking, well, you got your arms crossed. You're like, I don't know, man. Mortgage debt's going up. And you are right. You are right. In fact, we saw an increase of 6% compared to the same month last year for mortgage debt. And so what they're saying is, in this article, it's called Canadian Mortgage Debt Explodes in Growth as Payment Deferrals Hit Over 743,000. That is almost 750,000 people across Canada that are relying on deferrals. And that is just 12 of the major lenders. So that's a big chunk of people. And all of this is stuff we need to be tracking, because this debt deferral, this mortgage deferral thing, is it coming due? Yes. Yes, it is. And this is why I think it has a lot of people concerned about our market. Now, if we can contain the pace, we got this incredible movement right now in the real estate market in Toronto. If that happens at such a fast pace, maybe we can overshadow the mortgage debt crisis, this issue of deferrals that's happening. Maybe, just maybe. But more likely than not, it will hit us. I guess it's a matter of how hard will we get hit by the light rapid transit coming our way. Okay, are we on track? I want to move right along here and start talking about some of the things that are happening, because although we have all these things going on, right? We've got mortgage thing going. We got mortgage deferrals happening. The mortgage thing, that looming mortgage thing. We got Canada Day celebrations going on, right? But also we have a reopening going on in Ontario. And there is a lot of news, some of which probably comes across your feed of some of the next stages, like what comes next, where are we going from here? And so I thought, you know what, let's highlight some of the big things that are happening in around our city. Are we on track? It seems the cases just came back down below 200, and locally we're doing quite good. Wish I could say the same for Windsor, but I can't. But locally we're doing pretty good. So here's an article from the Star. Ontario will move to the next stage of reopening, quote, as soon as possible. That comes from Christine Elliott, who is the Deputy Premier and Health Minister. They also were talking about the idea of children's playgrounds reopening. We got those splash pads splashing around in my little Crocs. But what happens with playgrounds? And they're uncertain on how they're going to clean the equipment, of course, but they're waiting for additional data from phase 2 of stage 2. Of course, it happens slowly, and we cycle these on 2-week periods. But the good thing is that we are watching what's happening in front of us, and we are gauging it, and we are moving forward slowly. We are not moving backwards. That's key. And just yesterday, I was actually on a podcast, and I was asked the question, do you think we're going to shut down again? And it didn't take me long to say no. I don't think so. Do I know that for certain? No, I don't. But I am optimistic that we are moving at a healthy pace. I guess that's up to you. If you think there will be closures, further closures, I would budget that into your calculations and forecasts, because that would have large consequences on our market. And when we're having these calculations and these forecasts, even CMHC, I don't think they're planning a second closure. I don't think they do. Like, I can't see that being part of it. All they say is this big fat caption on the bottom of their forecast saying, due to uncertainty, yada, yada, yada. We can't fully know, which makes the forecast completely useless if these things go off the rails. But I do generally think the assumption is we will not reclose, that we will continue this process of reopening. And if you don't think that's the case, then wear a mask. Do your part, right? Like, that's all we can do at this point. Also, we have Ontario courts reopening. Some people there's kind of a backlash thinking, oh, we're not ready. The safety measures aren't adequate. And 44 Ontario courthouses are expected to open next week. Let's see. Now, all this is happening, and the news is out. If you haven't heard it, many cities across the GTA, including Toronto, have now made it mandatory to wear masks at indoor public spaces. So, City Council approved through bylaw Tuesday, which is yesterday, that they make face coverings mandatory, they'll make it for all residents to wear masks in all, quote, indoor public spaces. And this will be effective July 7th, so next week. And it'll run at least until September 30th or October 1st, which is the first City Council meeting in Toronto. And what happened was all the mayors, or many mayors and chairs from across the Greater Toronto and Hamilton area, wrote an open letter. So it's so easy. Like, just write a letter. We just got a letter. We just got a letter. You know, that's what Doug Ford's doing, right? Anything that's not, I hate you, he's like all on it. And they said, you know what? We already made it available for you as municipalities. This was pretty much their answer. Do it yourself. You can do it. Do it yourself. We're not going to do it as a province. And so now these cities are all rolling out very quickly, I might add, that they are going to be requiring face masks, which I think, personally, is a good thing. I know people, even in my church that I talk to, that refuse to wear masks. And it's so embarrassing. I think it's embarrassing. But, I mean, you have a right. You have a right to not wear a mask until now. Got to get on board, man. Stay home. Order online, I guess. Have them come to your house. You're not allowed going to public anymore. We also have, I'm sorry, I probably offended a bunch of people. I've been wearing masks since before it was cool, you know. Actually, did you hear, this is not in my notes, but fun fact, they actually have smart masks. It's becoming like a thing. Like, it's like we have smart this, and it apparently comes from a company who developed it just to survive because the rest of their products weren't selling. So they were becoming innovative and created smart masks. Fun fact. Also, the city's free parking is ending this week. So I know I've enjoyed the opportunity to park on the street without having to worry about overpaying or overtiming my car and trying to avoid public transit. But that is coming to a nice swift end as they reopen as well, right? So again, a reopening. Here and there's reopening everywhere. And so as things reopen, expect the market will continue to be on fire. This is our spring. This is the new spring. So we don't only have sales picking up, we have a reopening in the same time happening, right? So as this is going on, people are coming in the market, and I'm having to reach out to clients that I was talking to, telling them to wait, to say, guys, this is the spring. If you wanted to sell, this is the moment you should really be thinking about it. And I think it's crept up on a lot of people. Hopefully not for you guys, because you tune in with us on an ongoing basis. You know this trend and you've been tracking it for weeks. And that's why I'm so glad we've been able to do this, to keep you guys informed and in the know. Make sure you let your friends know. Maybe there's people out there that are just completely confused on what's been going on in their market. They can go back and listen to the last couple of weeks of podcasts and get completely caught up. Well, you know what they say. There's only 2 seasons in Canada. There's winter and then there's July. Happy Canada Day. Let's make sure we're not having any secret nightclub parties, because apparently there are people doing that over on King Street, getting fined now with no social distancing. So if you're going to social distancing, do it. For example, make sure you sit 6 feet back from those fireworks this evening. Let social distancing rules apply. I'll see you guys tomorrow morning with more. Happy Canada Day. Take care and keep it real.